بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. After introduction to this course on Islamic theory of knowledge, now trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking for His help and guidance, we start the first lesson. In this lesson, inshallah, we want to understand a little bit, very brief introduction to the history of this discussion about theory of knowledge. Something about some of the major issues that we are going to discuss, about definitions of Marifa or knowledge, definition of theory of knowledge, Refactionality, attitude of Muslim philosophers and thinkers about theory of knowledge, and also a little bit introduction to the possibility of having knowledge which is certain, which is free from doubt. Is it possible or not? And then inshallah a little about future discussions. So we start with history. Topics which are discussed in theory of knowledge have long history. At least they go back to the time of early Greek philosophers and thinkers and sometimes Sufis, because you know that philosophy was a term introduced by Socrates in contrast to Sufists who are using Sufism as, you know, people who have Sophia. Sophia means wisdom, hikmah, knowledge. Socrates said, we love Sophia, we love wisdom, but we don't claim that we have wisdom. So, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, pre-Socratic philosophers, and also other people like Sufis, etc., they have discussed some of these issues in their works. Issues such as, is it possible to know what is the value of argument for Sufis? They raise doubts. Are their arguments strong, valid or not? Different methods and means or instruments for knowledge. In particular, our knowledge about the outside world, relation between aql, reason or intellect, and hiss, senses, or you can say between rationalism and empiricism. These are old questions from early Greek philosophers up to modern philosophers and contemporary philosophers. Everyone almost has talked about it. You cannot find any philosophy or any serious philosopher who has not touched upon this issue, has not addressed this issue. Some people, maybe their main discussion is only this. Some people, they have discussed this, they have discussed other issues, but you cannot do any philosophy without addressing some of these issues. But as we said in the introduction, to have it as an independent discipline, something which is even different from metaphysics, from theology, theosophy, logic, is not very old. It's not very historical. This is a new born discipline. Like falsafa akhlaq, moral philosophy is the same. Philosophy of language, philosophy of mind. Issues were there, but to make them an independent discipline is not very old. In Islam, as we said, issues of epistemology are discussed in different places. In logic, in philosophy, in usul al-fiqh, as I said, even in irfan and akhlaq. But Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh maybe was the first person who wrote independently his ideas about theory of knowledge. In اصول فلسفه و روش realism, he discussed independently questions about epistemology. In بداية and نهاية are references, but in اصول فلسفه و روش realism, he independently discussed theory of knowledge. And then students of Allama like Ayatollah Misbah, Ayatollah Mutahhari, Ayatollah Javadi Amuli, even Ayatollah Subhani, who is mainly known for his works on fiqh and kalam and tafsir. He is also very much established in philosophy, and he has also works on philosophy. Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr was not officially a student of Allama. He was in Najaf, but he was following up works of Allama Tabatabai, and he himself was also very genius. So in his book Falsafatuna, as you know, those who have studied, Falsafatuna is very much about theory of knowledge. Maybe inshallah, if Allah gives us tawfiq, we can study Falsafatuna also in English, inshallah. So, since Allama Tabatabai's time, now we have people who have worked on theory of knowledge, independently, and among our younger generation of scholars, we have friends that they have worked on it. One of our friends, Mr. Hussein Zadeh in Qom, he has actually dedicated, I don't know if he does other things, maybe he does, but most of the work that I know, for example, is about theory of knowledge. Maybe for more than 20 years he was in philosophy department of Imam Khomeini Institute, and for more than maybe 20 years he's now working on this field, and he has different publications, sometimes small, sometimes 5 volumes, for example, and studies also comparative epistemology. And there are some other brothers who work. We have recently some textbooks also on this. So it's a new discipline, but old questions and old opinions also. I remember one of my professors in Tehran University, because I studied also Western philosophy in Tehran University, and one of my professors used to say something nice. He was saying that anything that you see in contemporary philosophy is indeed like a comment on what previous philosophers have said. There is no issue that was not touched at all by Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. And unfortunately, we don't know that much about the time before them. We know a little bit because we even had a course on pre-Socratic philosophers. We had 4 units, means 4 hours per week for a semester on pre-Socratic philosophers. But we don't know that much about that era. When you look at Aristotle's works, you realize that there must be centuries of work before, but they were genius in processing and developing and taking further, but they didn't start from scratch. Especially when you study, for example, the discussions about logic. So my teacher was saying that everything is like a comment, like a footnote on early philosopher thoughts. So somehow they have touched upon these issues, and it's very exceptional if you can find something which is totally new. Maybe it's new presentation, maybe a new wrapping, but all the questions are there. I think there is great truth. I'm not saying definitely this is the case, but I think there's great truth in this. So we had these questions from time of Greek philosophers, early Greek philosophers, or you can say ancient Greek philosophers. We had it in Islamic world in different disciplines, and then from the time of Allama Tabatabai we have it independently discussed, as also in the West recently it has become a discipline. Now let us see what is Marifa. Let's start with definition of Marifa, and then definition of Ma'rifat Shenasi. What is knowledge and what is theory of knowledge? Okay, so first let us see what is Marifa. So in Farsi we say Shanakht, in Arabic we say Marifa, Nadariyatul Marifa. Generally speaking, Marifa in both Farsi and Arabic means knowledge, understanding, cognition. It is used in different sciences, different disciplines, in mantiq, in philosophy, in usulul fiqh. It has been discussed, and maybe based on the context it can take different meanings. But what we mean here is mutlaq ma'rifat, means ma'rifa as such, or you can say ma'rifa without any condition, without any modification, without any addition. Understanding, knowledge. So you can talk about different types of knowledge. For example, maybe someone only wants to study moral knowledge. One of the major questions of meta-ethics is about knowledge of moral facts. Maybe someone talks about the knowledge in science, how we come to know something in empirical sciences. But it's better to discuss about all types of knowledge, or knowledge in general, and then about a specific fields you can have additional knowledge. This is something that all disciplines can benefit from. This is very philosophical, because philosophical questions normally serve other disciplines. So it's better we talk about Marifa in its broader sense, means any kind of knowledge and understanding. It can be mafhum concept. It can be gozare, proposition. In logic, remember we said ilm is either tasawwur or tasdiq. Tasawwur doesn't have any hukm, doesn't have any judgment. Book is tasawwur. Book of Zayd, Kitabu Zaydan, is also tasawwur. Beauty of the book of Zayd, for example, or usefulness of the book of Zayd still is tasawwur. But if I say book of Zayd is useful, then this is tasdiq, affirmation. So we talk about all kinds of knowledge, about mafhum, about tasdiq, and we talk about ilm husuli, we talk about ilm huzuri. Inshallah I will explain. Now, let us see what is Marifat Shenasi. So we talked about what is Marifa. Marifat Shenasi means a study of Marifa, knowing about Marifa, knowledge about the knowledge. Okay, this is a secondary knowledge because you want to discuss knowledge about things. So Marifat Shenasi is a discipline that studies few things, all about knowledge. One, what is the criteria for truth or falsehood of a proposition? Inshallah we'll talk that tasawwur doesn't have true or falsehood. This truth or falsehood. Yeah, tasawwur, you cannot say tasawwur is true or false. As soon as qaziyya, proposition, takes form, then you can say it's true or false, because qaziyya is, as mantiqiyun, as logicians say, قول مرکب تام خبری. Therefore you can say it's true or false because it is tam, yasihhu sukut. I don't want to go into discussion now. Inshallah we'll talk about later, just as if I'm refreshing your mind about the definition of qaziyya. So qaziyya is qawl, is a lafz, is a term, or more than one term, one or more terms which are said, and murakkab, so it's not mufrad, two or three. So qawl means one or more, murakkab means a combination, so it must be two or more, and should be tam, not naqis, means complete, so you can say it and remain silent. The listener wouldn't say you didn't complete your sentence. This book is incomplete. You cannot be silent. But this book is read, this book is wide, this book is good, this book is valuable. You can be silent after. So it's qawl murakkab tam. And then qawl murakkab tam is either khabari or insha'i. If it is insha, there is no truth and false. If someone says, please give me a piece of bread, you cannot say this is true or false. Even if this person has lots of bread, you cannot say this is false, because truth and falsehood don't apply to insha, like command. You can say he should not have said this if he had bread, but you cannot say it was false or truth, because insha doesn't have anything to correspond to. There is no ma bihil iza. Insha means you initiate the meaning, but ikhbar means it's talking about something, it's giving information about, so it has to correspond to the truth. So if it corresponds, it's true, if not, it's false. In any case, we will not discuss truth or falsehood of tasawwurat or mafahim, and also insha'iyat. We will talk about only propositions about qadaya. So we need a discipline that talks about such issues related to knowledge. The main subject matter is knowledge, but such issues like what is the criterion for truth or falsehood of a proposition? What's the method of understanding truth from falsehood? What steps we should take? All these are related to Marifat, Shenasi as a discipline. Imagine if someone gives us two sets of propositions. For example, in the first set, say set A, we have three sentences, three propositions. Number one, moral judgments are not relative, they are absolute. Some people don't want to say absolute, they say non-relative, but we mean by absolute here non-relative. In the discussion about moral philosophy, remember what is the meaning of being relative. It can be descriptive ethical relativism, it can be normative ethical relativism, it can be meta-ethical relativism. Basically, they say there is no single true or most justified morality, but in different forms and different levels. So, if someone says moral propositions are not relative, they are absolute. Number one. Number two, God is one. So, something from moral philosophy, something from theology. Number three, for example, three angles of a triangle make 180 degrees. Okay, that's geometry. So this is one set. Another set, for example, someone says moral propositions are relative. God is not one. Triangles of a triangle altogether make more than 180 or less than 180. Okay, so you have two sets. In each set you have three propositions, one about philosophy, for example, or moral philosophy in particular, one about theology, one about geometry. So, when you compare these two sets, you cannot say both are true. How can we say moral propositions are relative and are not relative and both be true? Or God is one and God is not one, both be true. So they are not be able to say both are true. We cannot also say both are wrong. Yeah, can you say God is one is wrong, God is not one is also wrong? Overall of triangles of the triangle becomes 180 is wrong, and becomes more or less is also wrong. You cannot say both are wrong. So we cannot say both are right, we cannot say both are wrong. We know that set A is true. Moral propositions are not relative. God is one. Three angles become 180. Anyway, this is something that we know, but we want to study now in theory of knowledge to understand how we come to such acknowledgement. We say both cannot be true, both cannot be wrong, and one of them has to be right, and then we say that set A is right. Sometimes maybe you have two sets that they are put in the way that one from this, one from the other is true. But here the first three were correct and the second three were not correct. So we have to understand how we come to such understanding, what criteria, what standards we have, what process we have, what methodology we have. And in principle, what is the meaning of truth? What is the meaning of falsehood? These are the things that we have to discuss. So, based on this, we can define Refactionality in this way. We can say Refactionality or epistemology or theory of knowledge is the science that studies the reality of human knowledge, how we can acquire knowledge, and what are the criteria for distinguishing between truth and falsehood. So this is the definition of theory of knowledge or epistemology. Now, let us have a quick reference to attitudes of Muslim philosophers or thinkers. So, Muslims have accepted the general attitude among philosophers. Of course, after Enlightenment, some Western philosophers have questioned foundationalism and possibility of certain knowledge, etc. But before, normally philosophers had this idea, especially if you go to like Socrates, you go to Aristotle, Plato, with all the differences that they had, they were endorsing, and they had the idea that it's possible to have decisive certain knowledge. So Muslims also have kept this idea, and thanks to God, Muslims, because they go through very long process of training to become philosopher, they have to study many sciences, in particular logic and philosophy, with teacher for years and years and years. So Alhamdulillah, we don't have that much of contradictory philosophical positions about at least major issues. Yeah, although, for example, about asalatul wujud, asalatul mahiyya, maybe there are differences. Yeah, but it's not that any Muslim philosopher would say, we don't have ability to understand the world. When it comes to such basic questions, normally they agree. Partly because they do philosophy with lots of training, so they try to understand, and this helps with coming with a common understanding. Plus, as a religious person, you cannot say we do not have reality at all, or if there is reality, we cannot know it. And this is why you find lots of similarities between Muslim philosophers, Christian philosophers, Jewish philosophers, because they have common theological ideas, and although they don't force philosophy to come up with the same theological ideas, but anyway, their mind is prepared, their mind is educated. You can do philosophy and be a religious person, and your religion helps you, not imposes ideas on you. In any case, so Muslims have this idea that it's possible to understand, to have certain and decisive knowledge, and they try to answer to the questions of Sufis and people who are doubtful about the world and about knowledge. They have jawab naqzi and jawab halli, means they bring counter arguments to disprove the ideas of, for example, Sufis, but also they constructively try to build this castle or this palace of knowledge. Like for example in relativism, ethical relativism, sometimes we question their arguments of those who are relativists, their examples, we bring counter-example, they bring argument, we bring counter-arguments. So it means that their argument becomes not strong, not able to prove. But sometimes we have halli, means in a constructive way we try to prove that non-relativism is correct. Sometimes people deny God and they bring arguments, you answer to their arguments, you bring counter-arguments. But sometimes you establish yourself through arguments that God exists. You prove, not you disprove their arguments or their claim. You prove your claim with arguments. So Muslim philosophers have done both. They have tried to answer to the questions raised by those who don't believe in possibility of having certain knowledge. If they have argued, they brought counter arguments. If they have brought example, they brought counter examples. But also they have tried to argue from scratch, as if there is no one to even question. We have to have our own arguments. We cannot say because no one disagrees or no one is able to disprove, it is enough. I believe in this because it is not proved to be wrong. We cannot believe in something because it is not proved to be wrong. This is not enough. Because this just makes it possible, doesn't make it necessarily true. So, in order to bring counter examples when they have doubts and they say, no, we make mistakes, etc., Muslim philosophers refer to a list of things that we know for sure. I mentioned few things. And also, they have their own constructive arguments. About those examples or counter-examples, we can make this list. Number one, human knowledge about themselves. Maybe some people disagree about we are material or immaterial, we are mortal or not mortal, we are eternal, not eternal. There is a spirit, there is no spirit, we are physical, not physical. Maybe there are issues about this kind of propositions. But every human being has a kind of understanding of himself or herself, a kind of recognition of himself or herself. Ibn Sina, of course, has that idea of Rajul Mu'allaq, suspended man. That is very interesting, but we don't need even that. We are all the time aware of ourselves, conscious of ourselves. This is one type of knowledge that no one can question. Number two, our understanding of our faculties for understanding. For example, we have senses, 5 senses. We taste, we smell, we see, we hear, we touch. So his. Then aql. We have aql to argue, to reason, to look into others' arguments. Hafidh, we have memory. Is there anyone who doubts that he or she has a memory? No. And imagination, takhayyul. So qawaya idraki, these faculties that we have for understanding are also positive, certain, decisive. 3, human understanding of قوای تحریکی و عامله. قوای ادراکی are for perception, for understanding. قوای تحریکی و عامله are moving us. The power that we have for moving, walking, lifting something, jumping, stretching your hand. So these are responsible for bodily action. Our knowledge about our feelings and emotions. For example, when you have fear or hope or stress or joy or love, do you think that it might be wrong? For example, I fear, I'm not saying whether it is justified or not. That's different thing, you know. Maybe, for example, you fear and someone says, you know, there is no reason to fear. It's safe. Okay. So you shouldn't have feared. But fear was real. Maybe someone loves, for example, a person, doesn't know that person, thinks that is a good person or is perfect, best person. Later realizes that no, it was not very special. So love was not in the right place, didn't belong to the right person, but love was there. Strong emotions were there. Hope the same. Maybe I have hope in, for example, getting best results in exam. And maybe this hope was not genuine because, you know, I didn't prepare myself that much. But I had the hope, even if that hope was not justified. So we are not talking about justification, we are talking about realities. So our understanding of ourselves, our understanding of our قوای ادراکی, our understanding of قوای تحریکی and عامله, our understanding of our احساسات and عواطف, feelings and emotions, are things that we don't doubt. Also, our understanding of basic principles, self-evident principles in logic, we don't have doubt about them. Logic is one of those sciences that are not in need of experience, not in need of observation in nature or in laboratory, etc. We have knowledge to begin with, and then we build upon those principles that we know by ourselves. Human knowledge about mental images, صور ذهنیه. For example, you imagine right now a rose flower. Your knowledge of this rose flower is not subject to doubt. Principle of contradiction. In Arabic we say امتناع تناقض. In Arabic is different from English. In English we say اصل تناقض, but they say اصل امتناع تناقض. So two contradictory things cannot exist together or not exist together, in the sense that both of them to be together is impossible, none of them be there also is impossible. اجتماع النقیضین محال, امتناع or ارتفاع النقیضین also محال. So this is also what we know. And then there are some other types of understanding that they are certain and we know them through our wajdan, through our intuitive knowledge. Inshallah we'll talk about it. Principle of aliyah is also self-evident. Al-kullu a'zamu min al-juz. Every combination is larger or greater than its parts. This is also what we know. So, according to Muslim philosophers, no one can doubt about such things that we listed. So, what is rational, what is reasonable, is that to use this capital of certain knowledge that we have, whether it's ilm huzuri or some of ilm husuli. Ilm huzuri, all of it is certain. Or some of the things in ilm husuli, we should use it as capital to build upon them and come up with more understanding. So it's possible. We can build the palace of truth and knowledge. Muslim philosophers also believe that there is reality. There is something other than me. It's not that it's only me and confusion, illusion. Maybe I am sleeping, maybe it's just dream. There is no wall, no windows, no garden, no street, no person, no computer, no book, no pen. Everything is just illusion. And it's only me. Even some people may doubt themselves. If they want to be consistent, they say, no, I don't know, maybe I don't exist. Okay, so then who says I don't know? Who says maybe? Yeah, even if you have doubts about yourself, who has doubt? So it means that you know doubt, you know that you are there who to doubts, etc. So Muslim philosophers say we know there is reality, and we say that there is a way to know this reality, certainly to some extent. We don't want to say we can know the reality 100%, everything about the reality we know. No, we say it's possible to have some certain types of knowledge. So imkanul marifa, possibility of knowledge, becomes very important. Those who are Sufis or those who are, agnostic, those who say we don't know la adri, whether they deny or they say we don't know, if they want to be consistent, they have to accept that they know certain things. Or those who are relativists, they say everything is relative. We say, is this also relative? Or this is not relative. If this is relative, then it doesn't require that everything is relative. Any person who makes a universal claim, indeed, it's because he or she believes in certain facts, then can make a universal claim. So even if that claim is not true, but it requires to accept prior to that some truth. And when they argue, even those who argue against philosophy, they have to do philosophy, because with philosophy you can argue against philosophy. Those who argue, they have to believe in aql, they have to believe in intellectual, methodology. Otherwise, why they argue? They shouldn't argue. They shouldn't look into arguments of others and try to challenge them. So, if we accept aql, this is something that inshallah in future we should talk about it more. If you accept aql, then you start all these discussions. And I think this is what everyone is doing, even Sufis are doing, agnostics are doing. Because this is part of our nature. In the same way that I don't question myself, reality of myself, I don't question my identity, I don't question that I can use aql to understand. It's deep part of our humanity that we have aql and we can use it for understanding. it is interesting that people may sometimes try to be humble when it comes to their money, for example. Maybe this person has lots of money, but says, no, I don't have that much money. Either because they don't want people to know, or because they are really humble. Or sometimes maybe have lots of knowledge. Say, I am a student. But when it comes to aql, unless they are making joke, but in reality, in serious, no one is questioning his or her of aql. No one says, I am mad. I don't understand. Actually, everyone is confident about their own understanding, unless there are mental issues. People don't compromise about their aql, because without aql, I am not what I am. My aql, which means my ability to understand, to argue, to present myself, to discover others, to form relations, is part of my identity. Without aql and accepting aql, therefore, if you expect someone to prove for you that aql is reliable, I think this doesn't work. How can someone use aql and argue with aql for validity of aql? This is part of our humanity. Yes, if someone argues against aql, I can use aql to reject. But I cannot use aql to prove aql is correct. Okay? Inshallah, we'll talk about it more in future. So, Muslim philosophers and thinkers have this attitude, yes? Have this attitude that there is reality other than me, and we can at least partially understand that reality. We cannot understand everything about the world. There are places that we have to go and see. If we don't go and see, we don't know. There are things that we have to try. With philosophy, you cannot understand everything, but we say parts of the reality are known to us, and we can have certain and decisive knowledge about them. I think we stop here, and inshallah we continue this discussion bi'idhnillah next week. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.